Hello and welcome to Agents of Aquarius, episode 25, coming to you from the delightful cloudy skies of Southern California. I am pleased to be here today, hopefully to spread some love, some enlightenment, a little bit of fun here with my best friend and compadre, fellow Agent of Aquarius, Mr. Matty D. How you doing, brother?
Doing well, Pine. Howdy.
Here we are. We found ourselves into the moment. We're approaching the eclipse. We're approaching the equinox. We're approaching the devil's comet.
Oh yeah, yeah. And the other new year, the springtime new year, start of growth, start of what you might think of as an actual start of a new year. I've heard it said before that our New Year's Eve in the middle of winter when nothing's alive and nothing's growing isn't really a good starting point for a new year. You wonder why your New Year's resolutions don't stick. This year, I'm going to be doing my New Year's resolutions on the equinox. Start the cycle from a different perspective instead of locked in the dead of winter.
Very interesting. It's a good time to do it. The spring or the equinox is always a powerful time because it's the time where you're coming into more light. It's the time where there becomes more light in the day than darkness in general, based off of like it's not for everyone everywhere. Because wherever you're out on the planet, you see it in a different facet. But that's what's happening. It's a powerful time. You know, right now it's a time for the Australians to go inside, and it's a time for us to come outside and
Heck
play.
yeah.
Come out and play. Uh,
And what was that comet you were talking about? I've heard of this guy. Is it timed with the eclipse on the 8th of April? Is that the thing?
okay, dude. So when the eclipse is happening, it also this is the last eclipse apparently in this fashion for 100 years or something.
Well,
And it's marking an X with an eclipse that was very similar to it, but traveled in a different fashion in August of 2017. And this
or
is the
October. Wait, oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of someone else. I went to that last October one down in Albuquerque. That was pretty cool.
and that was a different eclipse that then actually creates like this. It looks like the symbol of anarchy written on the United States.
Wait, coupled with that one from 2017?
Yeah.
No
Yes.
way.
When you fashion those three together, it creates a like an anarchy, a real anarchy, cool looking like anarchy symbol sideways, which would be anarchy. Like, why does the A have to be up? um,
It's wild though.
so because it's an A, Jim, and A's are the points headed up. V's are down. Okay, Vanarchy. So yeah, so the eclipse happening on August 8th, April 8th,
Yeah.
that is coinciding with the planetary alignments. There's like a huge string of planetary alignments also happening at that time. That also is with then you will be able to see if you're in the right spot or whatever. You'll see the Devil's Comet, and it's called that because it's a like an end of times comet. It's a time like but you have to remember they use these words, but it's like saying a death comet, but death means a new beginning. So
Yeah. Now, doesn't that comet come around like every 70 years?
something like that.
So
Bro, we
maybe
didn't
it's like
plan
one of
on
those,
this.
it's the end of something like that's about a human life. Maybe that's why it's the,
We didn't plan on this part of the conversation. This is all kind of sprung out. Sometimes we have some things we know we're going to talk about, but this time that is not one.
well,
Yeah,
wrap
so
this up then.
there's this
What's the deal with
incredible
this
alignment.
comet?
It's happened. That's also going to be shown in the sky, and then people go, "Well, this is so that things are happening." But you got to look down here in the microscope. Chuck the scientists. It's like that's the sky clock, bro. That's the real clock. No matter how they manipulate our calendar and tell you that today is April Fool's Day or April, that and it's like maybe it's not. Maybe that's the biggest fool ever. Is that April 1st is the really New Year's Eve or New Year's.
It could be. We've talked about it before.
So, um, yeah, dude, it's also interesting because they used to say Christ was born in the spring, and then all of a sudden his birthday is in December 25th. And it's like, well, here we are in the spring. Maybe the Christos is in the spring. And the biggest trick ever is they made you believe that the Christos, or what we call as Jesus Christ, this Christ consciousness, they moved it all the way into the darkest point of the whole year where it's dark for 3 days, the darkest for 3 days.
Right, right. Hey, you know what? We know that um people have been manipulating us for a long time, or we've been manipulating ourselves. There have been humans manipulating humans for a long, long time. And trust science.
Yeah, well, most recently, the biggest manipulations happened. We already spoken about this. I'm just going to run through it. The biggest manipulation happens when the Office of Strategic Operations, the OSO, becomes the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, in the 1950s. And at that time, they start interacting a plan, which is really weird because that coincides with Operation Paperclip, which is where they brought in Nazi scientists, Nazi experts in different
And
fields.
propagandists.
Not Nazi psychologists. That would be doctors. It would just be they call them psychiatrists or psychologists or psychoanalysts or some didn't do with the mind, but it's all where they were just learning about what does it take to break a human, what's the best way to break them and then reprogram them, and it's through trauma mind control. So we've been under an operation, the biggest operation that we know about since in the history of man. There's been happening for the last 70-ish years on the American public, as well through intelligence agencies throughout the world. This has all been happening, and we're the products of it. And this is what happens though when the stars align. People start to wake up and break out. And too bad. We already had foreseers that wrote about this. Was it to tell the plan? I don't know. Were they white hats? Were they good people that just like George Orwell? I don't know. But the information is there for us to learn from. We know what comes next. Like you could just read 1984 by
Yeah.
George Orwell. You'll see what's next. Thought police, thought crimes. You'll be getting
Yeah.
arrested for stuff you've never even done. You're like, I never even met them. Like, well, you were going to kill them in 3 weeks. So we got to kill We got to take the rest of you now. You're like, whoa.
Well, to run with what something you're saying there, the one silver lining is you could have been subjected to a lifetime of propaganda and mind control and still snap out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you need some stars to align, maybe you don't, but you
If
don't
you
it's far from hopeless. Once you open your eyes, you can't shut them again. That's the thing too. It's like as soon as someone realizes they've been getting played and lied to for a long time, they're not going to pleasantly forget that what they learned. Once you learn it, you can't put it back.
Yeah. You can break free. If you stay in the third dimension and you don't want to experience anything outside the third dimension, then you probably will be a good little willing servant. You pop some mushrooms in your mouth, you learn some detailed meditation, you'll start questioning things. You'll start wondering what's the actual origins of this reality, what's really going on here.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, we got there. We're gonna do part of that deprogramming. But here what we call it is break the news.
Beep, 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 beep.
All right. Break the news, everybody, is brought to you today by our sponsors, Cannabis.
Canada cares
No,
about us.
Cannabis.
Cannabis is sponsoring the show.
Cannabis.
Well, there is some news we got to break. And one of our sponsors this week will definitely not be Boeing because
Oh,
we got to
Boeing's not
talk
going to be
about
one?
these guys. Yeah. And I got a story from NPR. It came from Google News. That's where we scan the mass media to see what they're throwing at us, what they want us to think. And this one happens to come from NPR, which, as you correctly said before, a news organization you and I both really believed in. We really thought that that was some progressive, truth telling media. Turns out they're funded by the federal government and they often step in line. And they're also very partisan and they often have huge slants on their stories. And there's a bunch of bullshit in the NPR world. But moving beyond that disappointment that a trusted news source turned out to be bogus, we're going to use their story about John Barnett. He's the Boeing whistleblower who was found dead in his car from a single gunshot wound, or as this story repeatedly reminds us, was found dead, was found dead, was found dead, without any statement of how he died until later in the article, where it says the coroner ruled he Upon their arrival, officers discovered a male inside a vehicle suffering from a gunshot wound to the head. He was pronounced deceased at the scene. Now, through this article, they constantly remind us a man was found dead, and then halfway through, they say from a gunshot wound to the head. And somehow, uh, it appears to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Somehow they've concluded this enough to say in the story. How about this? Often when the news reports, they say the alleged attacker, the alleged this, the alleged that. This one doesn't say allegedly self-inflicted gunshot wound. He dies from what appeared to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound. That's kind of it's kind of an it's pretty clear what they're trying to say. And then it proceeds, the rest of the article, if you've made it this far, it just goes on to say his people from his family had been worried about his mental health. Now, this could be his third cousin, his third cousin twice removed. I don't know, but they never specify who in his family. They just say his family as a general roundup, as if there's this uniform understanding from his family that this guy killed himself.
What's his name again?
His name is John Barnett.
John Barnett. Okay.
Barnett. And this article from NPR concludes with just, here, he is suffering from PTSD and anxiety attacks. Family says Barnett's health declined because of the stresses of taking a stand against his longtime employer. It makes a very clear.
So
It,
this gentleman, John Barnett, was just found dead of an apparent suicide, or no, of self-inflicted gunshot wound.
Well, let's just say this.
No,
they found him
said
shot in the head.
Yeah, well, no, the words were what appears to be. That's what they wrote.
Yeah.
Like when there's an eclipse, the sun appears to be gone. You know what I mean? Like if there's a solar eclipse, it's like, whoa, there's no more sun. It appears to be gone. So yeah, you can write that in one perspective. That's what they wrote. But it seems like there was no actual investigation done. They wrapped it up right away. The campaign was done within a day. This guy kills himself. He had just given testimony to lawyers for his whistleblowing against Boeing for them using faulty parts, speeding up processes, knowingly using faulty equipment to make sure that the production does not stop. Do not let the line stop. And that's what he was whistleblowing on. Also faulty oxygen. I mean, there was all these allegations with oxygen masks not working.
Yep.
Just send it out. Like if the plane gets to that point, then who cares? It's like they're screwed anyway. So he's doing this. He's whistleblowing. He's been there 32 years, retired. He was directly in charge of this. I listened to him speak on some, like I've seen some videos of him speaking about like, they found all these irregularities and problems. And then they were like, you're not going back to do the investigation of because they would buy stuff from company Acme. They would supply their runway gear or something, whatever it is. And you have to go inspect the company's stuff before you accept it. And he was like, no, there's all these problems. And they're like, no. So he didn't get sent back to do his job the next time. His superior went. And they came back and they were like commended because they only found like a very few amount of problems. And that he then asked one of the two investigators, because he brought 4. This guy only brought 2. And then he asked one, he said, so they cleaned up their act. That's good. That's just crazy. It doesn't seem like something they would do. And then the investigator told him, was like, oh, no. We had 2 hours to investigate everything. Whereas he'd done this for days and days and days before with his crew. So
the result was with his team, they found hundreds of mistakes. And with the new team that had a limited amount of time to do the inspection, they only found like 50 mistakes.
Yeah, they just ran through it. So with that, I'm trying to say that for his credibility of like, this isn't just some dude. Like this guy, he's the guy that would investigate the items being used to manufacture aircraft. So he had a very important job. He was 32 years. He retired, I'm sure, and got a gold watch and accolades, I would guess, because he was not released. He's retired. And then that's in 2017. He retires, and then he starts whistleblowing against them.
Yes.
He then does not see the light of day because he's supposed to do another one of these. I was like on Saturday that just passed, I believe. And that's when he turned up dead because he didn't show up to the I don't want
The
to
deposition.
deposition where it's like a taped interview with lawyers and the whole thing. So he does not show up for that. And that's what alarms everybody too. Like, whoa, what happened? So this guy who's whistleblowing against a gigantic billion-dollar corporation with
Multi.
multi with defense contracts, the whole nine, let alone everything else they do. He's about to rat them out and say they've been doing this wrong.
In the process of ratting them out. Yeah.
He's in the process and been doing this for years. And then there's like, oh, he had mental. Yeah, you would suffer from depression and anxiety. I guarantee you, if you were going to take on a multi-billion-dollar corporation that's hooked to Defense Department stuff, and you haven't even told them everything yet.
You
know,
better
like,
be worried.
you're going back on Saturday to tell them more stuff.
Yeah.
You're going back again and again. And this is just the stuff without me going all the way back. They're like, let's just do the recent stuff for now and get the ball rolling, and then we can do the rest later.
And also, this is a guy who has told people that I'm not going to kill myself. He told friends that.
Bro.
Now, here's why I'm so excited to break down this news story. Because NPR, aside from painting a picture of, oh, a body was found. Oh, guess what? It appears they killed themselves. Oh, guess what? This person had PTSD and anxiety and mental problems. They paint a very clear picture of what they want you to think. But here's what we, the agents of Aquarius, want you to also think: that this guy got knocked off because he was being an inconvenience. He was going to cost this multi-billion-dollar company money. It's going to cost him reputation. And the idea exists in this country because of the way stories like NPR frame stories like this, because of the way they frame this. They never lead you to think maybe this guy was murdered to protect the interests and the finances of this giant corporation. It's been fostered into our heads for as long as we've been alive that stuff doesn't happen in this country, and that is complete and utter horseshit. This guy, in all likelihood, got knocked off by some sneaky, secretive branch of Boeing that opted on itself without going to the CEO or whatever to get rid of this guy. The idea that it doesn't happen in this country is so naive, because you have to believe that the motivations that cause people to murder in other countries don't exist in this one. I have news for you. Human nature is human nature, and people will kill to defend what they have. This is just like Stanley Meyer and his car that ran off water back in 1977. This bro made a car that ran on water. It was 1977, and he was on the evening news, like on CBS News, showing his car. And he's like, yeah, I filled it with water. I drove halfway across the state and back again, and the thing works. And then sometime later, after he refuses to sell his patent to an oil company, this guy dies while eating in a restaurant. He's eating in a restaurant. He stands up from his table, says, oh my God, I've been poisoned. And he runs outside in the parking lot, falls over dead.
With his brother.
Stroke or something like that.
He's with his brother having breakfast.
With his brother having breakfast.
They're about to meet executives, and they're going over their plan to talk with the executives.
Right. Now, the amount of times I've heard doctors who have really high success rates in getting rid of cancer, the amount of times I hear about, people who jeopardize the interests of these giant multinational, multi-billion-dollar corporations that disappear, that die from gunshot wounds to the head,
Hussle.
in the back of the head twice.
Gary Webb,
thank you. What's that?
I'm sorry, Nipsey Hussle.
The Nipsey Hussle.
Nipsey Hussle is like a good rapper, like a rapper for good.
Uh-huh.
And he was spreading information about medical stuff, like with this Dr. Sebi.
Dr. Sebi from Africa. Yeah, incredible.
Yeah, who I think's gone to jail for like curing people because you're not allowed to do that.
He might be dead.
Yeah, I believe he's also dead. But like, no, they kill they kill these messengers. Here's something I just want to point out. Let's keep it going that way. But here's how incredible we are as humans. When like, who's thinking to create a new motor? Like, that's okay. He must be an engineer. Stanley Meyer's an engineer, obviously. He has some crazy mind, and he's figured out a way to do it. I've seen a kid recently where like he created free energy through magnets, just using magnets and magnets that make themselves spin, and you have like a rotary engine that then generates electricity, and then but like if you go against these giant corporations, they just take you out. It doesn't matter though, because people are like, I came up with this amazing idea. I have to spread this information. I have to tell people I've done it. I've created like this is the this is like gonna save the planet. We won't have global change. Is it now warming? Global warming, global climate change. We won't have climate change. I've saved everything. We don't need the kids in Africa to dig up the lithium for the batteries. This is it. Boom, dead.
Dead.
And it's the news generally, okay, the mainstream media, all the way down to NPR, which used to be good until they started taking money from the John D. Rockefeller Foundation and the Puig Family Trust and anybody else that's hooked to that damn thing.
Oh,
Um,
the
so those media outlets will then deliver the information that they're told to deliver. It always goes in one direction. It's always somebody that's doing something, and they're about to break into that next level of making this become huge information for the planet, and then they go dead. And if they don't go dead, then they end up in jail, or they end up exiled like Snowden, or they end up like Assange, or you know, or they throw you in a brig like Chelsea Manning. It's like we present no good examples. Like, imagine if whistleblowers were the NFL, bro,
okay.
and like the best are put at the top, and they're treated as like national heroes.
They
Instead,
should be.
we don't even have a minor league system for whistleblowers, bro. We got nothing except, hey, you know what they do to whistleblowers, you know? And then Obama comes, oh no, or you know, Barry Soetoro was like, no, we're to tell everybody whistleblowing's good, you know,
Well,
and it's not
Barry
good.
Obama, old Barry Soetoro Obama, he used the Espionage Act against whistleblowers more than every other president combined before him. This is a guy who went after whistleblowers more than everyone. Like that was his special thing. And the Espionage Act was made in something like 1917. It's some really, really vaguely written law to it's just primed to be abused. It's so vague and so non-specific and what falls under a crime under the Espionage Act that anything is going to fall as a crime under the Espionage Act. That's why it's so easy for them to go after these whistleblowers. And when you read that NPR story and you're looking at it, again, it's putting this impression in people's heads whereby they never even think about the possibility that this guy was murdered by Boeing. You have to go to another news source to find that. Because in our news media for decades and decades and decades, that stuff doesn't happen in this country. Not because they tell us it doesn't happen, but because it never even mentioned a possibility. It's just always a given that it's like, yeah, this person killed themselves. It's really tragic. And Boeing says they feel sorry for the family and hope hope for the best. But it's just by never even offering it up for conversation that we're trained to think it doesn't happen. Yet with this guy, it's so obvious that that is exactly what happened. He was in the middle of his deposition and he was testifying against a multi-billion-dollar corporation, and they killed this guy. And I'm sorry to say, but so many of us won't even think that won't be the first thing that comes into your head. You, me, that's the first thing that came into my head. It's like, well, obviously someone knocked this guy off, someone from Boeing. But a lot of people won't even go there first. And then if you bring it up, secondly, you're going to get the label slapped on you. You're going to get the post JFK assassination label slapped on you, the conspiracy theorist.
That's right where I'm at though. Okay, they bring up the post JFK slur that they create. And then the truth is, every time somebody is trying to promote actual like wholesomeness and things that are going to propel humanity into a new era or new realm, like when JFK talked and JFK tried to take our money system back from the fractional reserve banking that it was starting to become part of, from
Mhm.
its having usury and borrowing money from an organization that had nothing to do with the government, that the government would have to pay interest towards, where you could just fund yourself if you're that great. But no, so he was
Yeah.
going against that. He was going against the intelligence agencies. He started to do, like, he was in the trifecta. He was going after the mafia. Oh, well, the mafia got him there. It's like, so you just support everything bad? You just keep supporting anything bad? Like,
No, no, I
angry.
like your trifecta. He went
I,
after mafia. He went after banks. What else was he going after aside from everything?
yeah, he slept with Marilyn Monroe. It's like, dude, she was CIA. She was a CIA sex kid. Like, chill out. Like, come on, dude. That's how they manipulate everybody. They send in. You don't think she got her little kick up? Oh, I'm sure she just earned her way to the top of being a movie actress back then. No, dude, we're watching it right now. You can't become a huge rapper without even having to bang P Diddy or whatever, P Diddy bang, whatever it is, the sexual scandals they create, which gets actually really demonic when you get into the stuff that's coming out right now in the rap industry. But it's the same. It goes all the way back. It's about taking people's energy, their soul, and so-called deal with the devil. The deal with the devil is you give yourself up and you allow somebody to take authority over your life, and in really horrible ways generally. And we have, as a populace, have literally gotten to a point in time where we are part of it. Are you going to be the Marilyn Monroe? Because we are becoming a civilization of that, of Marilyn Monroe's. And we'll make you a famous movie star, a famous rock and roll. Charles Manson was being operated by the CIA, Jolly on West. He was being programmed. And then he does these horrific things and they throw him in jail forever. And you don't think he's a little bit crazy? Like, I'm not forgiving him. It's just, dude, there's so much programming going on. They've become better at it and they're more subtle at it now. Even though they're straight in our face, but it hasn't changed all that much. This guy is whistleblowing on a giant corporation that are hooked to the military. Well, once you get into the military part, it's all bets are off. Like, they don't tolerate any of this BS, bro. It's a fight for our souls. This is where we're at right now, because as a society, we're just going along with it. And we're just like, no, we have to break this. We have to break this mind control trauma that we've been put under. We have to break this education system from the Rockefellers that we were put under, where we just become good little, like, students, just good little workers. You just do your little bid, your 40 hours. Who invented that? Like, no,
Well,
dude.
actually, that, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly where we're going to pivot to next, because on this show, every now and then we do plan on talking about something. And the Rockefeller influence on education is something we're going to jump into. Now, we
We're
are
just
first going to just,
it's more about influence is what we're trying to show. Like, there are going to be names to what we're talking about right now, but we were already talking about it, dude. These are the peddlers that create and buy the media outlets. So the media outlets only say one thing. Bro, NPR was supposed to be like a public deal and this incredible, like, a last bastion of good information, a place where you could believe the reporting and believe that this was not a biased source of news media. And then at every commercial break, you hear, oh, funded for by Rockefeller. And that's when I started going, and I started looking outside NPR and I went, oh, man, I thought I was listening to one of the last good sources, and they are just as corrupt as the rest of them. And
yeah.
they all became corrupted by, in this country, there was a face to it, because this face did education, it did medicine.
Well, when I listen to NPR, I often hear
When's the last time you
Johnson.
listened to NPR?
What's that?
When's the last time you listened to NPR?
Ooh, God. In all honesty, we're going to go back a couple of years, or maybe a year, because I might have been driving in a car with someone else who played it.
Okay.
But I would hear funded by a Johnson Family Foundation, the
Yeah.
Johnson and Johnson family. I looked it up
The
to
Puig
make sure I
Family
know.
Trust, the Puig
It
Family Trust, the Rockefeller Foundation.
Yeah, and it was like the Philip K. Wood
Yeah.
Johnson Foundation. I forget what it is exactly,
Mhm. Yeah.
but it's like Johnson and Johnson is paying them. They're not going to tell you a news story that is going to undercut their profits.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now the the theme that comes around so often is that this country is subject to massive propaganda. It has been for decades. And narrative management, narrative control, getting you to think what other people want them for you to think. That's been going on for a long, long time in this country. And this is why we're going into this Rockefeller business, because this guy basically started the General Education Board, a philanthropic organization endowed by the Rockefeller family and chartered in 1903 by the US Congress. Like this, this guy, to know how scandalous this person is, there was a miners' strike in Colorado 120 years ago or whenever it was. And um, essentially, agents of Rockefeller got the US military, who was posted up near the miners' camp, to open fire on the miners and their families with machine guns. It's a famous massacre in Colorado. Ooh, they live. Sunglasses have been put on. No, like this guy, this is a guy who will work people to death. This is a guy who will rob you of your wealth and happiness. This is a guy who will machine gun your family if you cross him. So this is not, there's nothing philanthropic about the Rockefeller name. There never has been. These are not good people. But this dude started to put his influence in education. He was finding out about education systems that would have been favorable to his financial empire. And what he needed, as he said in his own words, he doesn't need educated people, he needs workers. And the primary model that was working to that effect was basically a Prussian system from the 1800s, where they're teaching people to become good soldiers, miners, or administrators. The education system was so specialized that it focused on getting people to memorize stats and statistics and history and things like that, but not teaching any critical thought. This system of education was put into effect by a bad man a long time ago, and we have been under the effect of that education our entire lives, because it's not just, it doesn't end with our education. The same messaging you get from our school system is really similar to the messaging you get as an adult living in a Western, as an adult living in Western civilization. It's constantly there to just funnel you into a mode of thinking that makes you a good worker, a good soldier, a good administrator of other workers. And critical thinking got left behind long ago, same as holistic medicine got left behind long ago.
Yeah, got left behind because critical thinking was it was a big problem if they're going to try to create these mindless workers. Not mindless, because they were like, if we give them entertainment, we give them food, we'll just keep them on the hook. And then they created, along with that, we'll make them unhealthy and we'll create a whole new medical system that Rockefeller founded with the American Medical Association. And in let's see where we're at. In 1910, he has the Flexner report written, which then basically says that let me just go right to and yes, I'm wearing oh man, I left that. No, son of a knucklehead. The Flexner report's written, and that says that holistic medicine and these snake oil practices are no good, and that everything should be off of a disease theory. And they start creating germ theory, which has never become germ law because it can't be, because it's a theory. And it eventually becomes virus theory, but you'll be treated through these medicines. That basically, he wanted to create a system where he's going to be the ultimate snake oil salesman, and
Yeah.
then be like, no, 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 no. We're not in a wooden truck. We're not going around the town to town selling, these tinctures and these wares. No, no, no. We are backed by science. And then he sells his petroleum based chemical remedies that are deemed medicine. And now we look at, it's one of the biggest industries in the world, next to the defense, like defense, or yeah, military industrial complex is the military like health industry or healthcare, or it's so I mean, we just went through it with the pandemic. We were told that we had to take something from a company that our government funded the science to make, and then they said, well, we'll produce it, and then they had their biggest numbers ever, making money off of people, off of a path, like some type of
Hmm.
thing that's making people sick. And then along with this media from all these different agencies, they're all owned by six places that all kind of own each other anyway. Oh, wow. They might be lying to us. No, no, this is what Rockefeller was part of this. He did this and he really crippled this country. He gave a not a death blow, but if it is not treated correctly, will become the death blow to this country, is what he did in crippling us, not be able to think. You know, you got to put your glasses on, bro. You got to, that you got to get, check out They Live with Rowdy Roddy Piper. I'm just saying, you start seeing through this. So through completely, just literally, you have to think of this hurts the most. It's the most traumatic part is this, not the medical part. It's the part with you went to school and gave your childhood up. You gave up your precious childhood to go into an education system that was going to hinder you and turn you into a good worker. Like that is so traumatic. And that's probably MK Ultra probably love that. The CIA love that. They're like, oh, this you want a traumatic experience. People won't even realize. Let's put all these people from all these different places together into schools and force them to be there.
And
And
separate you from anyone a couple years older than you that you could learn social cues from. No, you're shoved in with a bunch of people who are dumb as you, and you don't know how to think,
in
and you
large
don't have
groups.
a role model to look to aside from a teacher who's telling you to memorize history and math.
Yeah, what is that history? They don't teach you how to think or create or understand what history really is, or not create history, but to go out and find it. They don't teach you that. They just tell you this is what happened. Don't ask questions. That's what and they don't paint any
Remember the
broad
dates.
picture. Yeah, it's just the dates, and they don't paint any picture. There's no emotion with any of it, which most of the history classes should be extremely emotional. And then beyond that, you just look at the curriculum they show you. The curriculum is you're going to buy in, you're going to go get your checkups from your doctor, you're going to go do you're going to follow what we tell you. We're going to have a dentist come in and give you fluoride. I remember that in third grade, or I'm sorry, second grade. It was first or second. It was a school that I went to in kindergarten, first and second. So in that time, I remember standing, you went in the hallway and then they put it in your mouth and then you had to spit it out. Don't swallow it, spit it out, you know?
Except you're absorbing it through your mouth.
Yeah, like everybody knows that's a great place to absorb drugs,
Yeah.
like
But remember, all these policies are coming from a guy who paid a bunch of experts to make up a bunch of crap that fit his vision of what he wanted. And the experts came forward and said, hey, we're science, trust us. Look, this is the Flexner report. You have to understand that this is cutting edge. And then he paid off a bunch of politicians in Congress to accept the Flexner report as if it actually were cutting edge. And at the same time, they destroyed 12 or 13 accredited holistic schools that didn't operate on allopathic medicine. This guy knew that allopathic medicine could be made from petroleum, and he wanted to corner that market. He learned what this stuff was based on what the Germans were doing at the end of the 1800s. And he paid to have allopathic medicine and surgery be the prime mode of treating bad health and disease. Like this guy paid the experts to make people think that made sense. And all he was doing was consolidating power and wealth again, like he did with Standard Oil. And then on top of that, they get people to think the way they want them to think because I keep saying this guy, but let's
John
recall
D.
a couple things real
Rockefeller.
quick. Last week we talked about Prescott Bush being funded or funding Nazis, but he was a bagman for Rockefeller.
He
Now
was
on
just a
top of that,
banker. He was just
yeah,
a banker. We did not try to paint
just a
him in a
banker.
picture of like, oh, he's some ultimate Nazi. No, he was a guy that's like, I'm willing to do anything for money. I will
Yeah,
fund whoever I have to fund to make money. I'm going to do the oldest game in the book. Learned it from the Rothschilds. I'm going to just fund the war. I'll fund both sides. I'm in New
right.
York funding both sides of the war.
And I'm glad you brought up that particular family because when John D. Rockefeller was consolidating American oil under the banner of Standard Oil, he was funded by a Rothschild-owned bank out of Cleveland. Like this thing didn't begin or end with John D. Rockefeller. It's just he was just a major player. And if we know his name, he's probably not the player. So this guy was funded by money from Europe, and a system was put into place that might not actually come from John D. Rockefeller. It might have come from any number of sources, among them the Rothschild banking dynasty. That's been around a long time. And like you said, when they
Well,
learned to fund both sides of a war, they got really, really rich and
let's
powerful.
let's apply this interesting outside the box thought. It's like, oh well, who like did the like? So does that mean the Rothschilds came and funded the Rockefellers? Hold on, let's not. We can look into that. That's a good place to look. But let's
Uh-huh.
sometimes apply like other things we've already learned. There's something called the 100 monkey effect. It's like once this information becomes privy to the but like one part of the world, it can become privy to the entire world. So it just could become some psychopathic like behavior, these
Hmm.
people that are megalomaniacs that just go on and think that they have some righteous place and become what would be called like American royalty at this point.
Hey, this is something we refer to as inherent knowledge too. Two plus two just equals four.
Hmm.
You could be anywhere in the earth and figure that out independently of the other humans. Your 100th monkey effect.
Yeah,
But
oppression. This is all it is a forms of oppression, so that you don't have a free and open society, free markets where capitalism would actually kind of work, but we don't have that because it becomes conglomerated and goes into these just like in a pool. If you put things in the pool, they'll eventually collect and usually end up together. It's
mhm.
like this is just it's like I'm sure there's a name for it. It's not absorption, it's the opposite of that. It's when things are attracted to each other. It's like a type of magnetism in a way. But yeah, these thoughts just happen and evil people will take them. Like serial killers have done some of the most horrific stuff. Governments have also done some of the most horrific things to human beings that would match serial killers because they do it in the open.
Mhm.
Like what's happening to people right now, like we talked about it earlier in the podcast, but hey, we're right back here again. Julian Assange, these people that are exiled and treated like the ultimate enemy. And to me, amazing that they're not even dead. I think they leave them alive because once they die, they kind of go away. That's when they really disappear. But Julian Assange, he's alive. And that's a problem if you're thinking about whistleblowing right now. If you're seeing something evil happening and we're like, hey, just stand up. Well, somebody might watch this podcast that's watching truly evil things that they have complete control over that is completely hidden or have been nobody else knows about it and they can't do anything about it because they know it'll destroy their whole life. And
Yeah.
that's a lot to ask somebody, and I get it. But this is what we watched. If you go out and try to do the right thing, our society shows you we will kill you or we will punish you and exile you to the highest degree. Your life will be absolutely destroyed.
Yeah, Julian Assange is in Belmarsh prison, an absolutely awful place, Supermax version in England. Edward Snowden stuck in Russia, and this new guy, John Barnett, is dead of a gunshot wound to his head. So yeah, it definitely has a cooling effect on people who are considering being whistleblowers. But this I think you might have brought this up earlier too. Like this is a sign of a changing consciousness. The fact that you have to kill whistleblowers, the fact that people are still coming forward, the fact that knowledge is becoming available. There's it's like the spell we as humans have been under for so long is breaking up a little bit. You can see some light through the clouds. Will that pace accelerate, or will it be another wave of suppression? I don't know. I'm kind of hopeful that it's going to accelerate. I think people can't help but be so um, oblivious to what goes on in the real world, the actual world, not the world that's presented to us on media. What's presented to us on media is that doesn't happen in this country, but in real life, it does. People get locked up and knocked off, and if you're lucky, you only get discredited and shadow banned.
Let's do a thought experiment here. Let's see where it goes. Let's think of somebody we know, and we can be creative with this. So it could even be fun. So we don't get just completely stumped, because that'll be ironic as well. Let's do a thought of experiment where we think of someone, or if we can't come up with the biggest one ever, okay? And we're going to use this term loosely, whistleblower, the biggest whistleblower ever that we, I think we're gonna have to get creative and like kind of be funny about it, and we could make it like, wow, okay, it's a creative way of thinking somebody's a whistleblower. And I say, tag you're at. Like, can you think of anyone that's a whistleblower?
Of course, I can think of many whistleblowers. Am I
Let's
trying to get
throw one
something
out.
fun
Let's
and
let's get
creative?
something. Yes, I told no,
When Johnny
don't.
Holmes told us
John
the
Holmes.
inside story of the porn industry.
Okay. Good. No, no, no. This I knew it was just going to be interesting because there's no like it's all going to be really weird. Keep going.
All right, I made that last part up. I don't know if John Holmes told us anything about the porn industry, but let's go to an actual whistleblower. Who was the OG guy back in
Help me, dude, because I'm
like the Malay
struggling.
massacre?
The Malay Massacre. What's that? I don't remember this.
That was in Vietnam when a bunch of U.S. soldiers machine gunned a village of people, like 100 people they killed.
Okay. So
And
somebody that guy was a whistleblower. You don't even remember his name.
he just died recently. He was all right. Then stick with one we know. Let's just go right to Edward Snowden. There's a whistleblower we
Okay,
know.
there's an okay, so he's exiled. He has to live in
He's
Russia. He can't live
he
freely.
he is exiled. Yeah, quite literally. Now, long ago, decades ago, you remember my brother would be high as hell talking his talk, saying the government's listening. Don't ever say things on the phone because they're recording you. And we're always like, come on, bro, just stop with that. But he was dead on. He was completely right.
Look what happened to
And
your
that's what,
brother.
yeah, that's what Edward Snowden brought the American public, that your government is spying on you. They are doing illegal wiretaps. They are illegally harvesting your information, all your emails and all your phone calls. They've saved it all, and they've used algorithms to extract metadata on anyone they want. And they use it as a system of control and repression. And Edward Snowden brought that to us.
Wow. I'm like, I kind of thought of one and then I went back into like I started really listening to what you were saying and I forgot it. I'm trying, I can't think of like I'm having a real mind blank of like popular. I mean, okay, then we just talked about so there's Snowden, there's
Here, Chelsea
Julian
Manning.
Assange, Chelsea Manning. All
Mhm.
these people have been like exiled, destroyed, put in prison.
Reality winner is either in jail or is hoping to get released.
Do you think
Um,
Tesla is not a whistleblower? No. Like it's for everything with free energy, it becomes like they're not whistleblower. That's not whistleblower. So the guy that made the water car, that's not whistleblower.
no, no, but look, John Kiriakou was a CIA agent who blew the whistle on our secret torture sites.
Hmm.
He went to jail for that. William Binney was an incredible guy at the NSA who told us about the metadata harvesting because he created the first metadata harvesting program, but the one he created left all your information anonymous. So if you said terrorist activity, you could get all these leads, but it wouldn't pull up everyone's name. But then once they rewrote his software to attach all the data to people rather than doing an investigation and find the connections, that's when he stepped up. William Binney was a really important whistleblower from like 2002 or something like that. So William Binney, reality winner, Chelsea Manning, Edward Snowden, Julian Assange is the publisher who printed the stuff that these people told him, and he's rotted in Belmarsh prison. Like
Is it
these, there's so many of them out there.
William Cooper?
I don't know. William Cooper is the guy who wrote Behold a Pale Horse.
Yes. He was
Is
like telling all this information about because he was Navy intelligence and he would like, I guess he's kind of breaking down the systems, but he's like a whistleblower to their project of like not telling everybody what you're doing. You like to MK Ultra. He was like a whistleblower to that in a sense.
I don't know what William, what's his name again? William who?
Wasn't it William Cooper?
William Cooper. I never read his book. I'm familiar with it. Like I've had some cliff notes, but I don't really know too much about that guy. I just know that
Okay.
that
Whoa, I got one.
that
I
he
got
got
one.
murdered by the IRS.
I
What do you
got
got?
one, dude. Oh God, no, I can't think of his name. The most famous whistleblower of all, Rudolph the Red Nose. No, I can't think of his name. God damn it. Oh God, Element 115.
Oh
UFOs.
yes, the Area 51 guy,
Area
Bob Lazar.
51. Bob Lazar.
Bob Lazar.
Bob Lazar. Bob Lazar. Yeah, dude. I want to write a song called Bob Lazar. I think you could just say Bob Lazar over Harry can't it's a Fish song. I can't think of it. It would be great. I'm gonna plug it in right now. Yeah, dude, these famous whistleblowers, none of it ends up good.
No,
None of
no,
them
because
become the LeBron James of whistleblowing.
look, everything at the end of the day is illegal, and everything you do every day you do something that can get you locked up. Would you breathe wrong? You whatever it is, like there's so many laws out there and so many vague, obscure laws that you could always get locked up for something. And the Espionage Act is how the whistleblowers get locked up. That's the one that gets them. It's 100-year-old law that was bogus from its inception. And the way it was written is really, it really gives it the ability to be abused. And that's what happens. This stuff, like we're supposed to know that the CIA has torture sites around the globe because the public cares about that thing. We don't want to be the nation that tortures people. It's just not what Americans in general want. So when John Kiriakou, a CIA officer, came out and said, "Hey, this is what's going on," that guy should not have been tossed in prison and had his life ruined. Now he's recovered. He does talk shows, he has his own shows and all these things. But for years, this guy was just harangued by the prosecutors, and he went to jail for doing something that the American public wants to happen. He let us know that we were torturing people. All these guys
Is
have
John McAfee a
causes.
whistleblower?
Who?
John McAfee?
He was just awesome running around on his boat with machine guns, smoking crack or whatever he's
Oh
doing.
my God.
That
I'm
guy.
trying to think, but I feel like part of that, some of these guys were actually like telling on the government.
Well, he did something very interesting, according to, I guess, his own statements and what may or may not be conspiracy lore. I don't know how.
Oh, it's
How
the
about I just
greatest
say what
ever.
he said? He donated
Yeah.
hundreds of computers to the US government, but he had planted spyware in them. And and I forget his reasons for doing it, but he's the guy that says I have all kinds of information on the US government. So I don't think he ever released it. He's had what do they call it? Dead man's what? Dead man's
Switch.
a dead man's switch, that on his death, we were supposed to find out all the information he had harvested from these government computers. But I never saw anything. I never saw anything. And in fact, I don't think anyone ever saw his body after he committed suicide in that Spanish prison.
He died. Yeah, he died very mysteriously. There's so much behind that. We'll talk about that in the future. I feel like it'll come up, and we'll go into way more detail on that. As you see in this podcast, a lot of time we just flow around and we touch on things that basically give you an opportunity to like look up, because the most important thing in all this is not to just listen to people. Look these things up. Write them down when you're listening, and then look it up, bro. Just Google stuff. But you're gonna have to dig a little bit. You're gonna have to use that curious mind and not always look at what was presented right to you.
Yeah, and please, for love of God, don't trust anything that says they're a fact checker. And your first 10 hits on a Google search are probably not going to be the information you want. He's right. You have to dig a little bit. You can't
Yeah.
just take the first thing that comes up and say, "Oh, well, this headline says they're wrong, so I'm not going to go any deeper." No, trust me, go deeper. It's worth your time.
What our podcast is, yes, we're the agents of Aquarius. Hey, disclaimer, we're not a horoscope podcast. All right. We don't do horoscopes. We're not over here saying, we will at time bring up terminology from astrology, and from astrology, we will use these terms because they are part of things, but it's a play on words for the age of Aquarius. Clip that. All right. This is what we do. We're over here just discussing things. We're trying to look at things in a new way of thinking, because we've all been through this Rockefeller school programming that has been paid for, bought and paid for, that so we would just become good little soldiers, little worker bees.
Mm-hmm.
And we wouldn't question the queen bee. Well, here we are. We've questioned the queen bee. We're breaking things apart. Please look into everything we're talking about. Our podcast, you can spend a whole week before the next episode comes out just looking into things. If you don't know about what we're talking about, you will find it. You will find what we're talking about. All right. All this information is not hidden. If you go searching, or you start looking, or you look with an open mind, that's the difference. That's what we are doing. We bring what nobody else can on podcasts is we have like 40 years of like friendship. So we have this, we have what we have in in our the way we can work with each other and talk. And we've also been very interested in this for like 30 years, this whole
Yeah,
subject and information. So we know what each other kind of know. We show each other things. We've been doing it. Now it's on like the daily, just sending clips to each other and talking about, sharing information. Um, and what we can bring is that perspective, trying to understand this whole thing that's happening. You don't have to, you can keep your head in the sand, you can not pay attention, you can ignore all this if you want, but it's going to be so in your face that if you don't have some type of ground and understand like some ground of the reality is happening, what's going on, and why is this all so crazy, this is why. This is all right now. What's shown in our face is a planned reality by these people that go from the names Rockefeller and on up the chain to where you don't find their names out, bro. Because they're the one that nobody, you know what I mean? This is how it goes. Because people with power and money and control will only want to keep that thing going, as we see from people like John Barnett, and go down the list, Stanley Meyer, down the list of people that help and want to change society. I mean, we had a couple guys that created this country, and and there's a lot of speculation, a lot of besmirching of those people, but they tried to create something good that the people could be in charge of. And this is how crazy it's gotten in 200 plus years.
yeah. Well, the spell is out there, and you can